Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I ask that you take your seats. We'd like to begin on time, and that way we can end on time. Microphones are not working. There we go. Okay. My name is Ross Sandler. I'm director of the Center for New York City Law and professor of law here, and I'm delighted to welcome everybody to this City Law Breakfast, the 144th City Law Breakfast in the series, and this is a Friday. Oh, thank you. That's 144. Who's counting? If we hit 200 or maybe 250, that would be wonderful. We'll have at least 9 this year, so I'm delighted that we got a good start in August. Before I begin introductions, I do want to thank the people who help us have these breakfasts, who sponsor them, make it so we can have them for free, open to everybody. The law firm of Greenberg Traurig has been with us for 15 years as sponsor of these breakfasts, and we thank them. Consolidated Edison was an original founding sponsor, and we thank them, and Verizon also a founding sponsor. We'd also like to thank those of you who made voluntary contributions. They are very important to us, and you do get a gold star. I guess that's good for a school, but you get a gold star on your name tag, and we thank you for that. I'd also like to thank the staff of the law school who worked so hard to put these breakfasts together. Brian Kasubit and Lillian Valle Santiago, Jesse Deno, and Jonathan Sizemore at the center, and the marketing staff and the other people at the law school who take care of all of these accommodations. So thank them all, and we welcome you to the City Law Breakfast. Let me introduce first our Dean and President, Anthony Crowell.
Thanks so much, Ross, and I'm really excited about this. This is our back to school special, as I like to say. And it's been a great back to school for us here at New York Law School. Not only are we thrilled to have the Chancellor here today with us, but I am really proud to welcome many of our 1L students who are in the room today. Would you all stand up, the 1Ls? Excellent. This is what we love. As the Chancellor can certainly relate to, we really want student engagement, and we've got it here, tremendously so. And we are proud to have welcomed 382 first years to our school this year, and it's just been an extraordinary opportunity for us to really recruit some excellent minds and some individuals with extraordinary commitment, not only to New York City, but to really building the law and pursuing justice globally. So we're really, really proud of you. So I'm very happy about that. And we're certainly honored to have the Chancellor here today, who I can safely say has among the toughest jobs in the country, certainly among the most important jobs in city government. And I want to first congratulate her and Mayor de Blasio on the news that was announced earlier this week about student proficiency on English and math exams. It's really a nice thing to have received that news at this moment in time. And I think New Yorkers can appreciate that the roots for success of our public school start with the Chancellor and the policies that she and the Mayor and all those in the system really work hard every day to refine. So it's a wonderful thing, and these gains are all the more impressive when you think about the immense challenges that are confronted each day in managing such a massive system. As I often say to my state and local government law students, a number of them who are here with us, you have to really think about city operations in terms of the S word, not school, but scale. And the scale of the city's schools is something that is immense and I think is often underappreciated. And so to deliver such a level of service and try to push for quality throughout every corridor in 1,800 schools with that affect 1.1 million students in all 5 boroughs is really quite an immense task, and one that is scale. One of the things that is really, I think, challenging is to, and I see it here as president and dean at New York Law School, is really to appreciate the different backgrounds that students come from, the challenges they confront, their family histories, their language skills, the immense diversity of experiences and their personal history is quite something in New York City And we like to call ourselves New York's law school because we embrace that, and we have the same makeup of the city schools right here so proudly at New York Law School. It's really challenging, though, to make sure that we can meet all the objectives and all the needs and understand what is required to make sure every student can succeed. And I know that the chancellor and the principals and the superintendents and teachers all work tirelessly to ensure that our school children are educated with this level of complexity that confronts them. The scope of the DOE's work is certainly one that is complicated because of a very complex set of rules, state law, federal law, and obviously local laws that affect the governance of the system. Luckily, and this is a city law breakfast, DOE has an extraordinary general counsel, Howard Friedman, an old friend from the law department, and an extraordinary legal team who works around the clock to make sure that there isn't a single school that doesn't have the advice and support it needs. And certainly the law department itself is a wonderful resource. I see Martha Mann Alfaro here, who works so much on education law and has been there. How long have you been there, Martha? 30 years? So the city is well supported by lawyers who are deeply committed to ensuring education in the city. So it's a wonderful thing. And we certainly have a number of our alumni working at various positions at DOE. I'm very proud of that. And I'd like to mention that, and I'd also like to ask your indulgence here, I'd like to make this city law breakfast in honor of Kathy Grimm. Kathleen Grimm was a graduate of this school. She was a deputy chancellor who sadly passed away 2 years ago. And the chancellor delivered such a beautiful eulogy about Kathy's contributions to not just DOE, but really to the city and the civic life of this city. And certainly New York Law School was one of the beneficiaries of her immense generosity in terms of her good thoughts, her mind, and she really helped lead this institution as a key member of our Board of Trustees, and she is sorely missed on a daily basis, so absolutely. So with that, I will let Ross come back up and do a little bit more of a formal introduction, but wanted to make sure that we all have a great year, new school year, and a wonderful breakfast here this morning, so thank you all.
Chancellor Farina said, make it short. As I came up. But hers is a model career. She really has set the standard. More than 50 years in the education of our city children. First in her family to go to college, 3 master's degrees, 22 years as a public school teacher at PS 29 in Brooklyn, rising in the ranks, principal, famously at PS 6 here in Manhattan, district superintendent, then deputy chancellor, and then retired, and after, 50 years, and comes back to take on the top job and is given an assignment to take on incredibly new things, the pre-K program, community schools, doubling of the after-school program. These are immense challenges, and to think about it, it's 1,800 schools, 1,100,000 children. I shouldn't be introducing Carmen Farina. I should be giving you a medal for what you have done and done for the city of New York for more than 50 years. We welcome you to New York Law School.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here today, and I would just like to qualify this in one way. You know, everybody always introduces me somehow as this is the hardest job, and I have to kind of change that because it really is the best job in the world. And the reason it can be done is because this is a passion. And to me, for those of you who are even still thinking what your next career should be or what you might add to the career you presently have, there is nothing more important or more energizing than being able to change the life of a child, whether that child is 3 years old, 15 years old, or 21 years old. And for me to have a job that allows me to come to work every day and say who at the end of the day is going to be better off because I'm here, it doesn't get better than that. So there are challenges to be met, but there are very few obstacles because I come to the work every day knowing that I, as a former English language learner, as someone whose parents did not go to college, didn't finish even elementary school, that I have a mission that is very, very special. So one of the things that I love is September. In fact, I just wished all the principals, I'm doing a videotape for them today, a sleepless night the night before school starts. Because it's like going on Broadway. If you take this job for granted and you think you've got it right, then you've got it wrong. It's about every single time that you open the school year, understanding that it's a whole new opportunity, a whole new beginning. Every child comes to school, the first day of school, thinking they're going to change their reputation, their paradigm. I was talking to some seventh graders this week in a school that's reopening, and these seventh graders said, you can even change your name. Nobody knows what you were last year. Change your name. Give yourself a new name. So this, to me, is the kind of opportunities that this job offers me, and I'm really thrilled to be here. To me, the goal of public education is to make sure that we have students that grow up to be either college ready or workforce ready, but most importantly, really good citizens of the world of the future. And if there was ever a time that we need good citizens, it's now. And citizens are people who can think creatively, understand particularly American history, and also understand that their role in life can be anything they want as long as they're well prepared. And to me, that's what every single school in New York City has to be. So yes, I'm thrilled about the scores. I'm not going to say no. But there's so much more that has to happen in schools. Schools have to be interactive places of learning. They have to be places where teachers feel happy coming to work. To me, one of the things I'm particularly proud of, and we were just talking about a little while ago, is that I think there's a different morale in the system. We have some of the best superintendents we've ever had. I have 44 superintendents, and every one of them is outstanding. And then we're starting September in a very unique place. In all my years, 52 years in education, every school in New York City is going to open in September with a sitting principal. That never happened. At the last minute, we were taking people from district offices or from where interim actings. But we now have people who really want to go into leadership positions. And to me, this is very, very important. So we're opening this year with 4 major priorities and initiatives. And I'd just like to preface this by saying too much, and not that it's not important, emphasis has been placed on the high school graduation rate, which, by the way, continues to grow and be high and will improve again this year. But the reality is that you don't improve high school graduation in high school. It starts actually when the child is born. And I think in too many reform movements, it all goes to the emphasis on high school. And I will tell you some of the changes that we have made and will continue to make. We really, under Mayor de Blasio, emphasize the universal pre-K. We have, starting this September, over 70,000 4-year-olds in our schools. 70,000. We're also starting this year a program for 3-year-olds, and there are 1,600 3-year-olds going to be starting school with a curriculum that we've developed in 2 districts in the city, with the expectation that that will grow at least 2 districts every year thereafter. So if you're a parent and you're a single parent, or you're a parent who has child care issues, knowing that you have your child in a safe place, to me, is also going to help you economically. So it's not just helping the child, it's how do you move the economy of the city so people can go back to work. I had a mother that stopped me in the street. I get recognized a lot more than I wish sometimes. And she's, I have to talk to you. Do you mind, Chancellor? Do you mind if I said, of course. What is it? She says, I want to tell you a story. She said, I'm a single mom. This is in Brooklyn. And she said, I really had part-time jobs because I could only pay for a babysitter 3 hours a day. Now that my child is going to school, just I can work all full-time, and I'm actually thinking going back to college. So that's a real game changer. So it's not just about the child in the school, it's about how it changes an entire family. Also, we started a program called Single Shepherd, and I want to be very clear that not every family is comprised of the same DNAs. And across the board, there are families who are in crisis for any number of reasons. You know, poverty certainly is one of them, kids in temporary shelter. A single shepherd is someone who has the child, meets the child as a 6th grader and follows that family right through high school. They are everything. They are a guardian angel. They are someone who follows the family, helps them with, things like homework, family situations, but make sure that that child is on the right path to college, and if the ones that are working with them already in high school, does things like helping them fill out the college applications, takes them to college campuses. There's a lot more we need to do if we're going to get college kids in college. It's not just about the academics. It's about how do we do the whole family thing. So our first priority is excellent instruction in every classroom and great schools in every neighborhood. And I'm proud to say that I do think we're really, really on the way there. There was a time when certain boroughs got more attention than others. I am telling you right now that the borough I spend the most time in is the Bronx. I think I'm going to be able to have to spend a little less time there because things are going well. This year we're opening school with over 250 teachers that are rated highly effective in the Bronx. That wasn't true before. But we've also, to make sure that the teachers are of high caliber everywhere, we now have professional development every Monday in every school, 80 minutes that was put into our contract. So how do you get the best teachers? They don't get born necessarily, but they have to have the wherewithal to improve their work. And I'm a proponent of Common Core, but you can't ask teachers to change something without giving them the materials. So part of what we've done is develop curriculum, and one I'm particularly proud of is called Passport, which is a social studies curriculum which is being now used by 92% of our schools in New York City, K-8, with a big emphasis on American history and cultures of the world. Because if we don't understand these two parts of history, we're really doomed to repeat a lot of our mistakes, and that comes with good instruction in every single classroom. The idea that more kids are going to college is really good, but they also need to stay there. Our getting into college percentage is pretty good, but we found out that once they're there, year one, that many of them drop out. It's something that they're not prepared for. It's also, in many cases, that they miss families and any number of other things. So let me just tell you a little bit what we're doing, not only to get kids into college, but to keep them there. One of the things we actually just did and are going to do again next week, we really researched what happens to kids, particularly in temporary housing and homeless shelters, who get accepted to college. And I went to one of their graduations, and one of the things I discovered at the graduation is that many of them hadn't even had the money to go visit the college site, and had agreed to go to places like Mohawk, Appalachia, and I'm saying to myself, do you realize how cold it is in some of these places? Do you realize what you have to take with you? And the kids looked at me because they'd never been, like I'd never went away to college. And I realized that, you know what, we gave them a college shower. College shower means that the employees at the DOE contributed money, and within 2 or 3 days, we had $6,000 of DOE employee money to give them a shower. And the shower meant they came. We did the Bed Bath & Beyond list, and they came to pick their own sheets, their own clocks, whatever it is that they need so they can be equal to anyone else. There is nothing we won't do to make sure they go to college and stay there and graduate. We've also asked every high school in the city to have a welcome back to high school day once a month. So if you're at college for the first time and you're having trouble, you don't know how to organize your time or any kind of things you don't know how to do, if you come back to your high school, you do two things. You inspire the kids who are there, going to college, you say, you better get ready because when you go to college, this is going to happen. The other thing is when they come back to meet their old teachers, they can be re-energized to go back to college and do what they have to do. So now we have mentoring programs where the college students come back to their high schools, and we have several high schools that started this several years ago, but now we're saying this is part of the model. They never leave you. When they leave you, they have to come back and really also be nurtured, because going to college doesn't mean you're a full adult. So excellent instruction in every classroom and in every single neighborhood. That cannot not happen with the school alone. So priority 2, and where many of you might be able to get involved, is support the whole child. How do you partner with families and communities? We have done a major, major initiative on working much more strongly with our parents. This summer, we had a pilot program that was so successful. We're going to spread out during the year. And this is called a family initiative program where we asked parents who were not working if they wanted to come to schools, some are in the city school, with their children and be in the classroom from 9 o'clock in the morning to 2:30 in the afternoon. And we specified parents of who do not speak English well or do not speak English at all. Because how much better to increase the literacy of children if their parents were learning right along with them. And we thought this was a very clever idea. It was almost like a no-brainer to me, because had I been able to take my mother with me to school, maybe she would have learned English at some point. But the reality is, it was all the unexpected dividends that, to me, made it sound it has to go citywide. I had a stepmother who sent me an email that she has almost like a mail order bride. She came to this country to marry her husband, who is Bengali, and got a stepchild as a result of this marriage. And she said they were having a little trouble, blending, but having come to school with this child gave them an understanding of how they could work together. She said, and she wouldn't have missed this opportunity for the world. And although this is one story, these are the kind of stories that go on and on and on in other places. So we are going to encourage parents to come to school. And also, if you're not literate in English, or even in your own language, a lot of our parents are illiterate in their own language, and you come to school and you learn something along your child, that goes beyond the school day. That goes to the home. That goes, how do you help with the homework? How do you do storytelling? So to me, partnering with families is crucial. We're expanding our dual language programs. That means that across the city in New York, we now have schools that teach 2 languages starting in kindergarten. We now have Japanese. We have lots of, obviously, Spanish is our most common. We have Mandarin is our second. We have Polish. We are going to start an Albanian. Any group that comes together and says, we would love, and that means that half of that class has to be native speakers in that language, and then they learn English. But together, how can you learn English if you're in a classroom with all kids who don't know English? To me, doesn't make any sense. And having been someone who went to kindergarten and was the only one who didn't speak English in my class, I really understand. I learned it faster because everyone else was speaking English around me, but I also did not have to lose my own identity. So our dual language programs throughout the city are also seeing bigger rises in terms of their scores, because these kids are coming and they're going to be proficient. They can read, write, and obviously speak in those languages right through actually high school. We're increasing our dual language programs in high school as well as elementary and middle schools. We are also now have translation services 24/7. So any parent who doesn't speak English but wants an answer to a question can actually pick up the phone and call. And why not after 5 o'clock? We run too many things in the system, not just mine, but a lot of others, for the convenience of the people who work on the system, rather for the convenience of the people who need to use the system. So saying to a parent, you may have a homework problem at 8:30 at night, that to me is crucial, and that's where we need to be, rather than say, okay, after 3 o'clock there are no problems, don't bother us. So the way we change things in our systems to become more of a customer-friendly organization is really, really important. We've increased the fact that in all our schools, many more of our schools are becoming community schools. And I know we have some organizations here, sports and arts, but there are many who now help run our schools till 6 o'clock, and in many cases also on Saturdays. You can't say to a family, and particularly a middle school, any of you in the audience have a 7th grader at home? Okay, my pity, okay? I say that lovingly. I love 7th graders. It is where I did a lot of my staff development when I was a staff developer, and I love teenagers. And I say that understanding full well where they're coming from and who they are. But if we get 7th grade right, the rest of the system is a piece of cake. And when I became chancellor, I was getting a lot of flack because I spent probably a whole 6 months visiting only middle schools. And if you kind of interpreted our scores, if you start seeing the biggest gains in our scores were actually in middle school. We have put so much emphasis in middle schools. Middle school is also where we have free after school in every single middle school in the city. Because I'd rather see these kids in school learning how to put on a theater production, learning how to play music or to do art, than actually going home and standing out on the street corner. So how do you change a system, not just for improving scores, but for improving kids' lives and options? We now have we spent an additional $30 million on this in the arts, just so kids have choices, because the arts are a great career choice in New York City. This past week, we've actually highlighted for more high schools to become arts-focused high schools, because that is also careers and it's jobs. So, but the community schools also, in many cases, provide other services. They provide after-school programs, but now they also provide health clinics and mental health clinics in particular. One of the growing issues that we are faced with in the society, not just in, is things like depression and kids who are phobic about a number of things. We can't have good instruction in the classroom if a child comes to school with all these other issues. So we can say, well, that's not our job, or we can embrace it and say, okay, so how do we deal with this? So having the mental health clinics, particularly in co-located high schools, has really been a godsend. And I think to some degree, they're also open to parents and the rest of the family. So you have communities all over the city, because this is citywide, that are now saying, okay, we're here on Saturday, we're here on Sunday, what you need. And I have to also say that you can't do these kinds of jobs without other city agencies. The New York City hospitals have been phenomenal. They have opened their doors to us. They have provided the services right alongside of us. We're working very closely now with ACS, and the more I work with other commissioners, the more I understand that this is not a job for one person. It's a job for all of us. And I'm so glad that Kathleen Grimm's name was mentioned, because I worked with her when I was deputy chancellor, but she was the first person when I became chancellor that I asked to talk to, and she and I went out to lunch. And we didn't always agree. Kathleen had a very lawyer mind and a very financial mind. She really handled the money. And my first conversation was, Kathleen, now I'm the chancellor, because I had been the deputy chancellor prior. I said, and one of the things that we really have to come to an understanding is, where do we prioritize the spending of money? And the spending of money has to be on where it's going to have the most direct results for kids' improvement, not just academically, but in life. And she was really someone who got that piece of it. And sometimes when she thought I was going to have an argument with someone, she said, do you mind if I come to that meeting with you, Carmen? Because she had a way of looking at you that you never said no to her, right? And that was the beauty of having meetings with Kathleen. And she once said to one of the younger people, she said, she knows more than you'll ever learn, so listen to what she has to say. So the rest of the meeting was a piece of cake. So number 2, supporting the whole child, working with families and communities. Number 3 is that we have to break down our silos. And this is where many of you come in. If you are looking for something to do, and also to understand why you're going to do what you do, become a mentor. We're really looking to bring the outside in. We're looking for more mentors. Paula Gavin, who does city service, is working with us to develop mentors for, I'd like to have, particularly in our struggling high schools, an adult assigned to every single high school student. And this year we've tripled the number. I think we have 3,000, but obviously I have 1.1 million kids. And it's a matter of a child having someone who's not a parent helping them and giving them advice and saying, if you're going to go for a job in an interview, this is what you should look like. I actually sometimes interview people and I say, what were they thinking? They're coming to talk to me? And I don't take myself seriously, but, you should have at least dressed up a little. Kathleen would never. Kathleen had a collection of men's ties. I go back to this. Men's ties that she kept under her desk. Because if any male ever came in her presence for a meeting, wasn't wearing a tie, she wouldn't say a word. She'd give them the tie. And that, enough said. And I'm just saying that that's part of what having a mentor also does. It's not just about the academics. Breaking down silos is also about moving from a system of competition to a system of collaboration. For too long, we had school rankings, and we had who's the best principal, who's the best teacher, and who's the best this. It's about what are you good at that you're going to give away and share with someone else. The reason I'd like to think that PS6 got some of the reputation is we hosted, after my second or third year, about 800 visitors a year, from all over the country, but a lot from New York City. And when I came into this job, I got so many emails from people. Anything you need, Carmen, just call us. I remember when I visited your school, as you just said, but other people said to me what we can do to help. If we don't move into a spirit of collaboration, where people say, I have a good idea, let me share it with you. We have something called Learning Partners, where schools that are doing outstanding work, and one in particular that always comes to mind, IS 88 in Brooklyn, she has some of the best technology work that I've ever seen anywhere. So I said, Aileen, I need you to start hosting visitors and showing them how to do this. So she became the first Learning Partner school. She works with 10 other schools in other boroughs, and people come and steal her ideas. And stealing is good. Because stealing means, A, you are now in charge of helping other people implement what you're doing, but more importantly, you're spreading your knowledge. If we keep it to ourselves and if we say, oh no, I can't give you this because, now I'm number one in whatever scale they're number one in, and I don't want to become number three. If you become number three by having helped other people become one and two, that's the real challenge. That's the real test of some ideas that work. So we're really working on breaking down silos, not just school to school, but borough to borough. In the Learning Partners, we also have something called Showcase Schools. Showcase Schools are schools that are doing something extraordinarily well, that have monthly visits to the school so other people can come in and implement what they're doing. And it goes anything from good English language learners work to good math curriculum to special needs students, schools that are outperforming other schools. Go and steal the ideas. I once heard Jack Welch speak, and one of the things he said, I don't reward my top managers, I reward my middle managers who know how to steal and implement other people's ideas in other places. And that's not a bad idea. It's how we take this. And for too long, the competition said, well, you have to be the best so that we can find fault with her school and close her down. So that's not the way we're going. It's how do we take the best practices. We now have a special innovative fund that we have to look for more money for that, but the superintendents were asked to come up with a good idea that no one's ever tried before, and it was not that much money. It was $25,000 per superintendent, and they had to write what they would do differently if they had the money, and then how they would share that idea if it worked with other places. And we had about 20 applicants. We were able to, I think, give out 12 to 14 of them, and then we had a showcase, and each of these superintendents shared what they had done and how they had done it, and now other superintendents are learning from them. I'm not a big believer in mandates, making everybody do the same thing, but how do you create some form of energy around creativity so other people can learn from it? So I love my Learning Partner schools, my showcase schools. I also believe you learn when you're an educator at your fingertips. And one of the first rules, we have something called Chancellor's Regs, makes you feel very powerful. And the first reg that I put in place, and I haven't done that many, but this one I really am proud of, that you have to have been an educator for 7 years before you become a principal. And I think that's part and parcel of how you say with pride, you come not only from the field, but when you're telling other people what to do, you've done it yourself. And I think that's a really important message, particularly when it comes to having, competition as well as collaboration. And the last one is one that I'm working on a lot this year, and certainly that everyone in this room could be part of, is how do you develop future leaders? We have to make leadership look exciting, energizing. We can't shy away from speaking. We can't shy away from being a leader. So we now have strong programs in all our schools to ensure that students talk all the time, that student councils are real, including in elementary school. Student council that meets with the principal and decides on the school discipline code or whatever is a good beginning, but it's not real. I went to visit a student council in Queens, PS, I believe, 220, and the principal said, my student council wants to talk to you. They hear you're empowering them. They want to tell you what to do. I said, oh, okay. And they came in, and they had dressed up. The boy had a tie. He had a suit on. I said, oh. So he said, well, Chancellor, I have only one specific request. And he said, I think we should have dogs in schools. So I said, oh, really? So I didn't expect that one. He said, and let me tell you why. He said, we have a child in our school who always seems to have a bad day. And I have a dog at home, and I know how when I come home from school, the dog welcomes me and how happy he is and how it makes me feel better. He said, but also, we have other things in the school that having a dog, I think, would really make a lot of sense, like we have test days. And I listened to this fifth grader explain to me why he wanted to do this. And I went back, and my team hates when I come back. Kathleen used to know when I went to a school, I'd come to Kathleen, that school needs to be cleaned up. Well, in this case, I went over to Elizabeth Rose, and I said, Elizabeth, we need to put dogs in schools. She said, oh, my God, she rolled her eyes. And then she said, I think there is such a program nationally, and it is Comfort Dogs. So we now, starting this September, we will have 60 schools with dogs in schools. But let me explain what but this is a no-brainer. Yeah, I mean, there are rules, there are laws. Someone has to be responsible. They have to take him home. He doesn't stay in the building. He goes home when But I will tell you that what has done in one of the schools in Manhattan that has this dog has lessened the number of incidents in their building substantially because they have what we call an S programs, kids with autism, and that class has adopted that dog beyond anything you could imagine. And the kids now know if they're going to have a meltdown, they go directly to the office where the dog is. The dog at IS80 is called Petey. He literally has a name. He's named after the school. The school is named Peter Roget School, so the dog is Petey. So I guess what I'm really trying to say, the leaders of tomorrow have to be given a voice today. So if you have a middle school council and you have middle school government classes, it has to be, how does the law work for us? And if the law doesn't work, what law do you want to see changed? I get letters all the time from high school councils that say, you know, Mrs. Reed, we think you should do this and that. I read them. I listen. But because the leaders of tomorrow, if they don't have a voice today, they're not going to be coming to New York Law School, for one thing. Being whatever job you have, if you don't feel empowered in that job, why should you do that job? This is all about creating. And today, particularly, I think having leaders who are willing to go out there and take a stance and say, this is what I believe in, or this is what I think needs to happen is very, very important. I also believe in principals who have principles and who are able to speak to audiences about why they do what they do in their school and what is it that they need to do to make this a better world for everyone. So I know they want me to take some questions. So I just want to end by saying, every time you read a news story about us, keep in mind that we are a system of many, many schools and many, many students. But we're all trying to work very, very hard to build a better tomorrow for all our kids. And the message, I'm speaking to all the principals in the city next week via webinar, I guess. And I'm saying for every student in New York City, the first day of school is the rest of their lives. And I mean that most sincerely. And they all come to school, you know, with new clothes, fresh notebooks, pencils, excited about the possibilities of what could be different this year versus other years. So the power that we hold in our hands is magic. And if we don't use it to the best of our ability, and why I came back from retirement is how could I pass up an opportunity to make a difference in people's lives? You just can't. Sitting on the beach gets boring after a while. So I do think that is the reason I'm here. I hope many of you will think, well, what can I do now in public education? I'm happy to take all comers in terms of what you can do, but thank you for allowing me to talk about my very favorite subject. And now I'm happy to answer some questions.
Okay. First, let me just thank the Chancellor. A wonderful talk of intelligence, experience, and wisdom. Thank you so much. Now, we have questions. We have microphones. Please, you go to the microphone. We ask that you ask short questions, short comments, because other people want to speak as well, and I will sort of moderate. So let's start on this side.
Hi, good morning, Counselor Farina. My name is May Vutrapanavatana. I'm a second-year student here at New York Law School. I'm also in the Legislative Advocacy Clinic here at our school, and I would like to ask you a question. You brought up a really good point about bringing in puppies and dogs in schools to improve mental health. Not gonna lie, I'm kind of jealous of being part of the New York City public school system once myself, that we didn't have that. But just wanted to know, what are some other alternatives that you're thinking about in improving the violence in schools and dealing with issues like bullying, school violence, fights? Are there other alternatives, such as like bringing in therapy dogs and things like that?
Well, first of all, we increased the number of guidance counselors and social workers citywide. We're trying to lessen the ratio of guidance counselors to students and certainly social workers. The other thing that we're doing, we're starting a lot of training on restorative justice practices. Many of our high schools, almost all our middle schools have received restorative justice practice, how to talk in circles about resolving issues. So we're looking at everything possible. Our suspension rate has gone down considerably, and we have a process for reporting bullying that we immediately take notice of. So there's a lot of mechanisms in place, and also more training of parents so that parents can identify some of these issues before they escalate to be even more serious.
Thank you so much.
Okay, now on this side.
Good morning and welcome. My name is Michelle Winfield, retired supervisor, New York City Board of Ed. And I'd like to know I volunteer, first of all, with National Dance Institute, a program that Jacques D'Amboise founded. And I'm interested how you can increase music, dance, and art during the school day, especially in the elementary schools.
Well, we've increased our arts programs almost double in the last 4 years. The most important thing we've tried to do is do it a lot more thoughtfully and with partnership with a lot of the, for example, Lincoln Center has now a Dance Institute program exclusively in District 7, so that every school in District 7, which is in the Bronx, is being exposed to dance, and also that the teachers who graduate from Lincoln Center Dance Program have a priority to being hired there. The other thing that we've done very differently is that we've asked elementary schools to work with their middle school. So an arts program that starts in elementary school can continue to the middle school. This summer, we also we started it last summer, but this summer it has over 250 students, an arts boot camp for students in middle school who want to audition for the select arts high schools. And we have a 2-week intensive program that's actually run at Lincoln Center, but in all the arts mediums, so students who may not have the opportunity to have an arts portfolio or dance audition program set up. So we have asked every elementary school teacher, principal to have at least one arts form. Many schools have 2 and 3, but also to work closely with their middle schools, their zone feeder middle schools, to develop arts programs that work together. We've given grants called Arts Matters if 2 schools work together on a specific art form.
And thank you.
Hello, good morning, Chancellor. My name is Esther Ramos. I am a preschool teacher educator. And my question to you is, what is your outlook on the Early Learn, Head Start future of these schools as proposed with DOE overseeing?
Well, I think first and foremost, as our early childhood population grows, there's always room for everybody, to be honest with you. What I see is happening more and more, and we saw it certainly with the 4-year-olds, more collaborations. Here again, we've invited even daycare centers to become more fully engaged with us on any kind of professional development that we offer, so there's more of a consistency. And I think that what we're going to see actually is parents sending their kids to your centers as well as younger and younger. One of the things, we can only do 1,600 3-year-olds, so there's plenty of room out there. But then how many of these agencies may now start working with 2-year-olds? And one of the biggest gaps in education happens to be vocabulary development. And vocabulary development, it really, after the age of 5 or 6, stabilizes. So if we don't start rich vocabulary as young as possible, you have parents reading to their kids when the day they're born. That's crucial. That's not just, pie in the sky kind of thinking. So how we do that is really, really important. And by trying to lessen the gap, it makes it easier when they get to the testing grades.
I totally agree. Thank you.
On this side?
Hello, Chance. My name is Mark Turner. 25 years ago, I was one of the few black men teaching primary school kids in Hell's Kitchen, PS 111. That was 25 years ago. I'm not teaching anymore. My question is the fact that even going back further, in the 80s, I grew up in the South Bronx. Samuel Gompers High School, Alfred E. Smith High School, Grace Dodge High School. You can get a pretty good vocational education if you wanted to go that route. As you read the papers today, gang activities on the rise. What are we doing about the vocational education?
Okay, well, first of all, we're not calling it vocational education. We're calling it career and technology and engineering education. And the reason for that is that quite often kids were pushed into a vocational education with the assumption that that's all they can aspire to. Now, I think it's great to be a plumber, an electrician, and so forth, but you should be able to get the training in that and say, well, maybe you still want to go on to college. So our CTE programs now allow for dual graduation. You can get a certificate in a specific trade. I just went to visit Governor's Island, which is totally run CTE, where you can get now a certification on scuba diving and boat making. So I believe in that kind of education. I just think it's really being given another way of looking at it. And the CTE, we're opening 40 new CTE programs this September, but based on what the job market is going to be asking for. Actually, in the Bronx, you now have in one of the schools design and construction where the students are learning how to build a house. They're building a house in the school. They're going to take it apart, put it back. And I do think that for too long, we have also only thought of college-educated people as on the right path, where I come from a family of plumbers, carpenters, and people who earned a very good salary and very good money. So I think we need to give kids options, but the options have to be in jobs that are real jobs and living wages of the future, because too many of these jobs were make-believe in schools, and the kids didn't necessarily also graduate with good skills in reading and writing, and you need it all.
Good morning. My name is Felicia Alexander. I serve on District 16 CC. I'm co-chair of Community Board's Youth and Education Committee. I have 4 young kids in the public school system. I have twins who are entering 3rd grade, and I have a 4th grader. And my first question is, what are we going to do with the teachers and the principals not stressing the kids out on the first week? Because last September, when my daughter started 3rd grade, literally the first day of school, she came home in tears. Mommy, I'm in a testing grade now. We have a test this year. And I think that that's not the way to set up a child's school year, by scaring them the first day that you're going to take tests at the end of the school year. So what are we going to do so that they don't scare the children? And then are we going to put forward a culturally responsible curriculum and have it spread out amongst the districts and have a pilot program where the teachers are trained in this?
Yeah, well, first of all, your superintendent is battling to be number 1 in the city. You know, Rahisha has high goals for herself and for everybody else there. And you have a wonderful CEC president that is always full of ideas as well. But the most important thing to keep in mind, I will definitely mention that when I do my webinar to teachers, that makes school joyful. But I do think also setting expectation for kids in a way that's appropriate for kids is important. So it's not about the testing grade, but it's about how hard are you going to work this year to make sure you can be the best 3rd grader possible. As far as culturally responsive classrooms, our Passport curriculum has that embedded in every unit of study. We're doing more for training new teachers. This year, all our new teachers took culturally responsive program as part of their new teacher training. All our teaching fellows had that. But if you, and again, any parent in the room, when you go back to your schools, ask principals to do a night of PTA around the Passport curriculum, where you can see that for yourself in terms of how you discuss some of these issues and how you talk about what history was and will be. So, but Rahisha, I will make sure I have a private conversation as well.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Danny Pello. I'm a first-year student here at the law school. If you had an unlimited budget, what program or initiative would you look to implement citywide immediately? I know it's an open-ended, tough question.
Yeah. I think one of the things I would do is open an academy for parents. Not for parents on how to be parents. I think some of that parents know how to do. But for parents who really want to increase their language skills and whatever. I've been visiting a lot of our adult centers around the city, and I'm impressed, but there's limited time that they can spend on this, and I think that's really important. And I think I would also expand our community schools to as many middle school. I would start with middle schools as possible throughout the city. There's a real need. I can't emphasize enough that if we get 7th grade right, everything else is a piece of cake.
Could you do a little more about what community schools are?
Community school is a partnership with a school from an organization that is not an education per se organization. Sports and Arts, Children's Aid Society, Good Shepherd Service, the list is endless. But they come in with a different view, and they are there to develop the other part of the child. If the school is doing the academics, this is something else that's being done in a different way. They are, again, providing the health services in many of the schools. They're the ones who are making sure that if a child wants to report themselves for depression, I was just in a school where one of the high school kids was going to the health clinic for that. They have dental services. It's almost like being a full service institution, but they all serve a different purpose. You have some that come in to do more sports, some that come in to do more arts, some that do more parent engagement. It varies from organization to organization. One of the major jobs they have under this particular, in our renewal schools, is to increase school attendance. One of the biggest issues we have is students' chronic absenteeism. It is one of the single biggest reasons why kids fail in school. So having someone on board who can call the home, visit the home, if necessary, go to the home in the morning and make sure they bring the kids to school with them. That's partially what some of these community-based organizations do.
Eric Crump, I'm a member of CEC4 in East Harlem. I wanted to probably preemptively steal your thunder and also thank our superintendent, Estrella, who is very good and very dedicated with her leadership. My question is about physical space and movement space, especially for the younger kids. I have a child who's entering second grade. Our building is co-located with a high school. I know there's a lot of elementary and junior highs that are co-located with high schools. And the challenge we face is a challenge that I'm seeing over and over again from other schools in the district in terms of how do we get each child enough time, not just weekly, but even daily if possible, for physical movement and activity, whether that's gym time, whether that's green space time outside, especially for the younger kids. It's an integral part of the education that they need to have some time to move and experiment and play and move their bodies. How do we solve this facilities challenge?
Yeah, and this was one of Kathleen Graham's favorite topics. Well, this year alone, we did a survey citywide about where we need more space. So we are actually adding either more physical education space to certain schools. There's a whole, list of schools that are getting gyms that didn't have them before. We're looking at programming in schools where there's co-located space. There are very few high schools with elementary schools. I mean, we don't encourage that, but having said that, we're also looking for what are some of the other phys ed programs that can be done like in the classroom itself, like Tai Chi, and we do yoga. So we're trying to increase the repertoire, not just of only a phys ed teacher doing it, but what can classroom teachers do as well. So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of work to be done here. We are also working with the Parks Department. We're actually working with the Parks Department to designate certain parks in the city for schools that don't have that much physical space as school only during the school day. So that's happening mostly in Queens where the overcrowding is at. But if that's something certainly as a CEC member, you should bring up at a meeting and have Alexandra discuss with you how she's going to do it, because I do think there's a lot of potential there for getting it right.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Naftali Moster, and I'm the Executive Director of YAFED, Young Advocates for Fair Education. So I've heard you talk a lot about giving every child an opportunity, making sure the high school graduation rates go up. But I have not heard a single word about the Hasidic community, which is actually the fastest growing population in New York City. There are tens of thousands of children attending Hasidic yeshivas that are being denied a basic education, even in subjects such as English and math. Hasidic high school boys spend 14 hours a day in yeshiva and get 0 secular studies. I know this because I attended this, and I know hundreds more who've attended and are struggling as a result. The poverty rate in the Hasidic community, as a result, is skyrocketing, and again, it's the fastest growing population. You've been informed about this more than 2 years ago. You said you're investigating. Last year you said you're going to produce a report, and it has yet to come out.
Okay.
You have a comment on that?
No.
I think it's important to get a response. I think it's been long
The
enough
response is
that
no
you're
comment.
investigating. It's been way too long, and it's not fair for tens of thousands of Hasidic children.
This is a very complicated problem.
It's not
and
complicated.
right.
You've solved so many other problems during this time. It's not fair for these tens of thousands of
Thank
Hasidic
you
children.
Thank you for the comment, and let's move on now to the next slide.
Good morning, Chancellor. I'm Dana Jones. I am a second-year student here at the law school. And you had mentioned some restorative justice practices and that suspension has been on a decrease. Now, my question is twofold. Has that since, what is the DOE's position on police presence within our New York City schools? And does the DOE track data regarding the need for safety officers in these schools and the instances of violence within a school or district?
We have head of safety, Mark Rampersant. We work closely with the NYPD, particularly in the last 2 years. And we keep, all our school safety officers have been retrained on what we call de-escalation issues. They now have to have an additional 2 weeks of training prior to what they used to do before on how to talk to students, particularly if there are students that are known to be in crisis. So that training is part, Commissioner O'Neill and I actually did a restorative justice circle in one of our schools to demonstrate how this conversation takes place. So I think we're in a very good place in terms of working more closely with the NYPD. It's also how do we create more relationships so that people are not seen as adversaries. For example, there was a cadet there's a cadet program that the NYPD is putting in many more of our schools where police officers work with the students after school and over the summer to encourage students in areas of discipline, but also tutoring them. We now have we have something we started called Team Up Tuesdays, where precincts in the city now team up. One day it's with elementary schools, one day is with middle schools, and one day it's with high schools. And the police officers from that precinct come into those schools and have roundtable discussions where the students are encouraged, and I mean encouraged, to say, well, listen, I don't feel safe on this block, or, you know, when I see a police officer, this is what I think. So I think we're getting to a good place and having discussions. We still have a way to go, but this is not something we're forgetting about, but we're working very actively on it.
And I guess the second part of the question, does the Department of Education track the number of safety officers in correlation to the number of incidents within a school?
Absolutely. We keep these figures. I imagine they're part of public record, but I have all these figures. We do this on a monthly basis. We review all the records. Sometimes we move people from school to school, but there isn't anything that we don't keep in writing and we don't keep figures for.
Thank you.
Hello, Chancellor. Good morning. My name is Dennis Fitorian. I'm a 2L here at New York Law School. First off, I want to say thank you for being here, and I actually think that you deserve a round of applause for all the great work that you do. My colleague beat me to the punch here, but you were talking about how we can develop more productive citizens in our city and how we can develop future leaders as well. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about what's called the school-to-prison pipeline and what are some challenges the DOE is facing in terms of making sure that the students of our city become productive citizens.
Well, this is one of the challenges that I take very personally. I have been to Rikers, also known as East River Academy, 3 times already. And one of the things that happened after the first time, I realized there was a lack of books. There was a lack of real learning. So one of the things we put there, they now have a library. They now have set aside reading time. We've increased the amount of time that they have to spend on academics and in school. They went from, I think, a 3-hour day now to a 5-hour day. We now have we do professional development for the teachers. But this is a drop in the bucket because, first of all, we have to make sure they don't get there in the first place. Secondly, when they're there, how can their time be used most beneficially? I've actually gone and had a discussion with 7 of the students there, 7 of them, to see what is it that they think would have made their life better. Many of them are in foster care. When they leave there, they don't have a place to go. So one of the things we're strengthening is when you come out of incarceration, what is a good middle road to be? Those of you going to become lawyers, this is something that I think should become a concern. Not how many clients you have, but how many people can you keep from being a client. So this is not just my job, it's our job. And I think the more we work with these students in a very nurturing environment, the better off we're going to be. So this is actually one of the things that, however long I'm here, this is a part of my job that will be with me the rest of my life. You cannot live in a society that is totally punitive and doesn't see redemption in most people. And that's something we all have to take under our wings, not just me.
Thank you.
We're going to
mean,
end
just
this
maybe
program
one.
in about 4 minutes, so we
Right.
may not get to everybody standing, but let's take this question here.
Hi, my name is Ronald Sally, and I'm a product of the New York City public school systems. I went from PS 286, actually PS 52, to 286, which is a brand new school in District 22, to Sheepshead Shellbank Junior High School, Sheepshead Bay High School, Stony Brook, Harvard Law School. And I say that only because, I'm sorry, I'm not wearing my tie, not here as a lawyer, but really as a parent. I had still have a serious issue with twin high schoolers that I have. And I'm very happy to hear your remarks about making the system much more consumer responsive and consumer friendly. But someone with my experience with the school system had a most definite roadblock in terms of dealing with this serious issue with my high schoolers. So I really need some help.
May I
Or,
ask you
uh,
to bring this to a conclusion because
Yeah,
others are
there's
standing?
Yeah,
there's
no
someone- there's
problem, but
someone in the
I'm
back.
just wondering,
I have someone here who will be happy to take your information. Where's Tanya? I just saw her. If you're going to talk to Tanya,
Okay,
she'll get
yeah.
your name. Well, someone will get back to you, sure. Tanya? Okay.
Hi, my
This
name
will
is,
be the last question. I am very
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah.
hi, my
And
name is
Nikki.
Christina Sparak, and I serve on a crisis intervention training program for NYPD and Department of Mental Health, where I train police officers on how to de-escalate and with crisis communication skills with dealing with people with EDP or emotionally distressed people in any setting. With 20 to 25% of the population living with the mental illness, and by 2020, depression will be the second leading illness in this country. How do you plan to educate teachers and students on various types of mental illness, whether it's the symptoms, seeking treatment, and how to reduce stigma? Because this is going to actually build the people, build the self-esteem of the students so they could be future leaders and decrease the bullying. And my second part of the question.
Okay, let me just
Sorry.
answer this one.
Let's stop
Sorry.
Okay.
there. Thank you.
First of all, this is one of the reasons we're increasing we have our single shepherd. All our single shepherd students have been trained in this particular issue. We have an entire department now that's looking at how do we talk to teachers more concisely, if you want to say, to identify this. This is a concern of ours, and we're seeing it actually starting younger and younger. So how we train teachers and what we do with those teachers, I think, is very important. So it isn't like we don't know that this is a problem. It's how do we get it to go citywide? And we're starting with what we call the hot spots, the places where we see the rise. And that's where our relationship with the hospitals is particularly wonderful. The hospitals have been very helpful in running workshops for teachers in this particular issue.
Also, peer specialists will also help in the school setting as well through
Yeah.
Thrive program. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all. Let me bring this to a conclusion. I want to thank the Chancellor for a really an important breakfast today, and with so much wisdom and energy. And I am, for speaking for myself, I am delighted that you came back from
Well, I
retirement.
want them to be able to say how they're going to volunteer and help me.
Ah,
So they can
okay,
leave a
all
call.
right. So she's leaving with an assignment. Before you, thank you all for coming. Our next breakfast will be in September, and we'll have Polly Trottenberg, who is the Commissioner of Transportation, will be here. As we always like to do, we like to give a product of the scholarship of this law school to our speakers. And so I'm not sure this is necessarily completely relevant to your job, but this is a wonderful book by my colleague David Schoenbrod, DC Confidential, Inside the 5 Tricks of Washington. It explains how you can get through the Washington mess. So,
There's an answer?
That's an answer. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Chancellor, for a stimulating and important morning.